we're going to encourage a minimum standard, but we're not going to say sliding scales can't be done. We don't have that authority.
Right, so you're going to leave that out, but Sherrill, how does your constituency really deal with that?
Okay, I think it's a really good question that you're posing, and I think it's important to step back for one moment. The advisory that was issued, MRC advisory, went out to the entire ecosystem, and in addition to informing everyone of the status of the pilots, there's some very important copy in there, and I want to highlight it. It talks about it is premature to begin transacting. And I know that's part of why you are asking that question. And it's something that we all agreed upon. The 4As and the leadership members of the 4As who were in the room. Joe Barone, sorry to put you on the spot. You were in the room that this advisory is necessary and that it is premature to transact, but you're not the only one. So it's very important that everyone understand that. That's why there isn't a schedule of testing. And that's why, as we learn what we didn't know, we can collectively change the timelines. Now, the other thing that I really want to address that came up that's in your question, buried in your question, the notion of charging versus not charging. Well, here's the deal, literally. Until there is an agreed upon transactional standard, and until there is enough intelligence to know how to do the bargaining and do the negotiating, you have to transact on what is still there. And I get it, what's still there is not really as good as what we aspire to be, but you can't change currencies if you haven't even set up the right mint yet. You can't do 10 pennies equals a dime when you're not minting the pennies.
To jump in, you're right. I was at that meeting, and it is what we talked about. And we did issue a POV that basically said this is work in progress, and we need to get it right before we adopt it broadly. By the same token, the cat is totally out of the bag. And 25 years ago, one magazine, I think it was McCall's, broke rate card for the first time, and everybody had to follow suit because that became the industry standard. I was at a client meeting last week where they were saying, you mean we've been paying for impressions that nobody can see? We don't really have the luxury of time to figure out exactly the right model. And also, you've got hundreds of digital planners and hundreds of clients. We have hundreds of clients, and we have 550 digital planners and buyers across GroupM. We can't control what every one of them asks for a publisher. The really interesting thing to me is that there's actually 3 V's we try to keep straight in our minds, right? There's viewability, there's validation, which is target composition, and there's verification, brand safety. And we talked before this panel about asking a question about the reluctance of IAB member publishers to adopt this structure. But I mean, we understand why they're reluctant, right? Because you are changing the ecosystem. So the question coming out of this to you that I really want to ask you is, what's the temperature in the room with publishers when we start doing things like multiplying those 3 things, right? Because we're coalescing around providers that can deliver all 3 of those, right? Like Nielsen OCR and VCE and services like that. So when we come and say, okay, we know the ad serve account, but we're going to multiply viewability by verification, by validation, and that's the number we want to pay for. What's the temperature in the room on that?
I think that's part of a negotiation, but as a representative of the sellers, I would advise that since we all know how flawed measures of viewability are and how many variables we still can't control for, that we pursue the route that we've agreed upon, which is continue to test. Because to tell you the truth, even if a seller wants to do things like say, okay, fine, I will move forward on my own and then the rest of the market follows suit, which the rest of the market may or may not, there's no way to determine what the right way to do it is. So I really think that in this case, on the viewable piece, it is absolutely fundamentally necessary to take into account what we don't know.